You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. This morning we continue a series of discussions we began last week with non-incumbent candidates for Cincinnati City Council. This week all the guests are first-time candidates for council, facing the most difficult of all tasks in a field race, trying to establish an identity for themselves among the voters. We begin this morning with Jane Anderson, a Democratic candidate for council. Ms. Anderson holds a doctorate in political science. Over the years, she has served on the Cincinnati Human Relations Commission and is the past chair of the Women's Political Caucus, among other things. Ken Anderson is a Republican candidate for council. Mr. Anderson has worked as a realtor and an insurance manager. Currently, he works as a title examiner. Welcome to Newsmakers. Now, Jane Anderson, Ken Anderson, I just got to ask the inevitable question. You two related?
No.
And I'm not the football player either.
Oh, okay. But maybe you could call some of the plays on Sunday.
Maybe I could.
Bengals might need some of that. Okay, but you're not the football player, just to clarify that. Let's begin with a basic question. Jane, if you're elected, what will be your top priority? What will be the number one thing that you'll try to focus on?
I think unquestionably the top priority for this city has to be, and certainly it is a top priority for me, is getting a better handle on our relationship with the schools. We have to provide a more effective partnership with the schools because our children's future, our future as a city, depends upon the condition of the schools. One of the things that council has failed to do, miserably failed to do, is take a more proactive approach in partnering with the schools to get a handle on the problems the schools are facing.
A lot of city council candidates are talking about education in schools this year. Concretely, what would you do as a city council person as opposed to a school board member? What would you propose that city council do to create this better relationship that would affect anything in the classroom?
For starters, I think we have to establish a mechanism by which we can effectively partner with the schools. I think we need to establish an ongoing set of meetings with the school board. We need to pull city officials, school board officials together to meet on a regular and ongoing basis and develop strategies.
About what topics?
One of the first strategies we really need to do is strategize about how to be more effective lobbyists at the state level to deal with many of the state issues. At the top of the list, financing that affect the schools. We do have a stake here and we need to partner with them to establish better effective strategies for that issue. Secondarily, as a part of the strategizing, we need to figure out ways that we can use existing city resources more effectively in partnering with the schools to provide a more effective learning environment for the children. One of the areas that we now currently fund is the school nursing program. It is a barely adequate program as it is. We can do a much better job of using those resources in this area.
I'm aware of time. One final question on this. We talk a lot over the years about reforming city council charter. Is it time to start thinking about reforming the reorganization of the school board, which was done in 1917, 7 years before city charter was done? Is it time to think seriously about that and maybe bring the schools under city council?
I don't believe that's an effective way to go. I don't think the
That's
city
not what you're
council
talking about.
should run the schools. I think we should be an effective support system for the schools, not run the schools.
Ken,
Yes.
If you're elected,
Yes.
what would be your top priority? What would be the thing that you would focus on?
Okay, actually I was still focused on education, but I'm the only council candidate that is focusing from a different level. I'm looking at our universities. We have some great universities and institutions of higher learning. Actually, City Council cannot do anything with the Cincinnati Public Schools per se. However, we can work with the universities. I plan to talk to the heads of each university and technical college here, tell them to develop a niche market within a 120-mile radius so we can get people coming from other cities to come to Cincinnati, develop Cincinnati into the city for higher education. Over a 10-year plan, if we can increase our educational status per citizen, then that will help us as politicians when we go out and talk to businesses and ask them to relocate to Cincinnati, because first thing they ask us now is what type of employee pool do I have to pull from? If we can show that the average Cincinnatian has 1.8 years of college or whatever the statistic is, we will be far ahead of our competition because we will use this and start working on this market now.
Do you think the colleges are not doing that at this point? I mean,
No,
Xavier has grown,
sure.
UC has grown.
As a matter of fact, I'm a graduate from Xavier University, and they are doing that. But I would like to see us work as a concerted effort where we not only have Xavier and UC, but we have Mount St. Joe, we have Hebrew Union College, or Union Institute. We have a number of Cincinnati State. So I would like us to do maybe work as a concerted effort, and then once we draw them in here, then let the people decide which college to attend.
Okay, second area. There are a lot of things on the city plate right now. A lot of proposals out there: riverfront development, convention center, neighborhood development, a whole slew of neighborhood development proposals. Ken, what is it that you believe the city should be putting its dollars behind, and are there any of those clear things that you think the city should back away from?
Well, first of all, I think before we decide to develop the banks in Cincinnati, I think that we should develop the neighborhoods in our city. We have 52 communities here. We have a lot of vacant buildings in the city. I think we should work on fixing those vacant buildings up first, expanding our tax base, and also in creating better housing opportunities for people and homeownership opportunities.
So you would not develop, when you say the banks, people may not be as quick to recognize that. You deal with it every day. We're talking about the proposal put forth by the Rouse Commission on September the 30th to develop housing, to develop retail, to develop the tops of the parking garages. So you're saying back away from that for the time being?
Well, I would say that we have to prioritize, and I think that I would put the priorities in the communities and fixing up the vacant buildings in Price Hill and Avondale and everywhere else before we start developing downtown. We have a lot of downtown development, and I think we need to start moving the dollars to the neighborhoods.
Jane?
I think, first of all, we have to take note of the fact that the banks and the space they had to work within down there in terms of riverfront development was determined by some prior bad decisions in putting two stadiums down on the riverfront. And that was a most unfortunate choice because it really narrowed the options for the development of the banks in the first place. I think it was the mistake of the decade for the city to have turned over one of our most precious resources to the county, and then the county turned it over to the Bengals and the Reds. Having said that, I think certainly development needs to take place on the banks, not necessarily this particular development. But
do you or do you not support this development proposal?
I think it's something that has to be, as far as city resources, I think we have to be very careful about the resources that we use there. I think the more effective use of our city resources would be further development of our neighborhoods, including downtown as a neighborhood, which we must do, over the Rhine, and have an organic flow from developing those neighborhoods first, and then it will naturally happen, I think, probably with a lot less use of public resources. There will be a private market for that development.
Okay, let me ask both of you a question here. In the past week, City Manager John Shirey has made it clear that we're going to run into a budget problem, and part of that problem emerged from the fact that City Council devoted, if I remember correctly, $51 million to the convention center in a way that he feels was unplanned and unwise. Do you support the city contribution, involvement with the convention center? Do you support the proposal for the convention center as it now stands? Ken?
Actually, I do support the convention center. However, I also support I propose that while we are building that we should incorporate into this America's Comedy Hall of Fame, which would provide income, it would provide an anchor, it would provide a tourist attraction for people to come to. We have a choice. We could build a single-use facility, or we could build that facility but also build into it a museum where people will come to that will attract the people. I firmly believe if you build it, it will come. I believe in expanding the economy.
Why that? Why, and people, that, again, that might have slid by people, a comedy Hall of Fame. Right. Why that topic? Well, and have you benchmarked other Hall of Fames? Okay,
first of all, the reason why to bring that topic up is because I feel that we could contact people who are in the entertainment industry, such as David Letterman and Jay Leno and Bill Cosby. And I think that we would have their interest. And also, we do not have a Comedy Hall of Fame in America. And basically, if we could use, if we did get their interest, perhaps they will help us raise money in the private sector to help us to pay for this. So actually, this is to partnership private sector dollars to help pay for our public facility.
Yeah. Being in the museum business, you know the problems that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is having to get any money out of the music community. But Jane, what about Convention Center?
I do support Convention Center development. I think it was probably a better choice to spend multi-millions of dollars than the stadiums as a first choice for an economic development generator. I think it would have been much more effective use of our resources. I do think we need to proceed with it. I think we need to make sure, however, that the way that we do it, it does a better job of incorporating this facility into our downtown and as a usable facility for people who live here, not just for people who come in from out of town. Other communities who've expanded their convention centers have done a lot better job than the current plans appear to be doing on that front. In Philadelphia, for example, they've used it as a showcase for artists, local artists. We could use it, for example, to provide some town hall facilities as a meeting place, a civic space in addition. But secondarily, on the question of the funding and the financing, part of the problem of City Council now is it does its decisions making with regard to revenues and spending in a very piecemeal fashion. One week they're deciding to spend $51 million on a convention center. The next week they're deciding to do a property tax rollback at the very same time that they're issuing information about next year's shortfall in the health department.
Ken, we have less than a minute. In that sense, do you feel that council's process is a problem, and would you try to change the process if you got elected?
Yes, I feel that really in council right now that we do have a lack of leadership. I think that we are not working for a common agenda or for a common goal. So I think that we do need to have strategy, planning sessions, and to work so everybody is on the same page so we know where we're going.
How does that change, though? How do you change that?
Well, through consensus building. In council, you need 5 votes, and I feel that I've always been a consensus builder, and I can work with people cross party lines and everything else, and I think that's the way you do it.
Okay, thank you for the Anderson group here, part of the slate. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. After the break, I'll be joined by 2 other first-time candidates, Alicia Reece and Chris Monzel. Welcome back. Over the years, a field race like the one for the Cincinnati City Council attracts many candidates. Very few ever win on their first try, and many are never heard from again. Occasionally, first-time candidates make an impression, even if they don't win, and that first race becomes a harbinger of things to come. This year, I have been struck by how many people have mentioned the same 2 names of promising newcomers. One is Chris Monzel, a Republican candidate for council. Chris has several degrees in engineering, as well as a master's in public policy from Harvard. He works for TK Engineering Associates Incorporated. Alicia Reece is a Democratic candidate for council. Alicia works as the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Communiplex Promotions and Reece Enterprises. She also is the executive producer of the influential show AM Talk on WCIN, hosted by Lincoln Ware and occasionally hosted by Alicia. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Competitors, but you're on during the week, I'm on Sunday, so we're not really competitors. Chris, if you're elected to council, what would be your top priority? What would be the thing that you would really push for?
I think council needs an agenda. I think in our neighborhood, I'm vice president of Winton Place Community Council, and we're a small neighborhood, but we get together at the beginning of our year when we're elected, and we set a plan. And if we can set a plan for a neighborhood to accomplish things, we should be able to do so for city council. So my top priority to get in there the first week would be to get everybody in a room, check our egos at the door, sit down and do some agenda setting and some goal setting for the next year, 5 years, and 10 years.
I hate to challenge because I think it's a wonderful idea, but you know, if you hang around City Hall, setting agendas and checking egos at the door, you know, pretty problematic. I mean, realistically, do you think that can be done?
I think so. I think from meeting the people on the campaign trail, people like Alicia and others, I think that we've gotten to know each other, and I think I can bring brokering a negotiation to bring the people to the table to actually, because it's for the future of the city, and I think we all care about that. So I think I can do that.
Alicia, what would be your top priority?
My top priority would be putting people in the equation. I'm on the street corners every Friday since March from 4 to 6 talking with citizens, and what the things that they're very concerned about is, one, they want to make sure that those who are uninsured can have health. So I'm going to be promoting that we put adequate dollars into our city clinics.
Which, by the way, if I understand what's going on in City Hall this past week with the sudden announcement that we may have a budget shortfall, the health clinics are a real issue here, right?
Yes.
Because the number of people needing those services has gone up significantly.
Right. And I think that's a top priority, and we have to make it a priority because people who are not healthy, it presents a dying city. Secondly, they're very interested in having comprehensive plans for neighborhoods that include housing, that includes strong business districts. We have a comprehensive plan for downtown. We need to now sit down and put together comprehensive plans for neighborhoods where our people live.
I'll try to do the same thing I just did with Chris.
Yeah.
Lived in Northside for years, live in College Hill now. I'm too old, and I've seen a lot of plans, master plans for communities, come and go. Is it really possible to develop effective plans rather than dreams for those neighborhoods?
I certainly think so. If we can come up with a comprehensive plan for the riverfront, talk about creating a community in a neighborhood, we certainly can sit down with our existing neighborhoods and talk about putting together comprehensive plans. That's why our neighborhoods look the way they look. People see little progress because we haven't sat down and put some real goals together.
Chris, there's a lot of proposals out there. Some of those are neighborhood proposals in specific neighborhoods. There's all kinds of proposals on the riverfront, the Rouse Commission proposal, the park proposal, housing proposals, the convention center, lots of things on the city's plate. What do you support, and what do you think the city should say we've got to pull back from at the moment?
I think you're right. There are a lot of proposals out there, and I think that's a good sign. I think that means that people are interested in the city and in the future of the city. And for me, the items that I think are important are neighborhood proposals. One, I believe, like Alicia, that we can't forget our neighborhoods. That's where we
And you think we have?
I think that we need, I don't know if we have per se, but I think that we focused a lot on downtown, which has been important, and now we got to turn our attentions back to where the families are living and where we're raising our children. But I think we still need to have focus and have economic efficiency in our budget and invest wisely in projects that are going to pay off in the future, such as the convention center.
So you support the convention center?
I support the convention center. I think it's very important. I support development of the riverfront. I think that is very important.
Do you support the Rouse vision?
The Rouse vision, I don't want to say that I'm fully supportive. I think it's a great idea. I just need to look into a little bit further to see what exactly it's going to be funded and how so. And I think, you know, it's the right direction. I think we're going in the right direction as well as light rail. I think we definitely need to have a future vision for that as well.
Alicia, what about some of these big ticket items, convention center, riverfront, and let's throw in light rail?
Mm-hmm. I'm in support of Convention Center, but I think it needs to be a balance. Convention Center has to have a direct impact in our neighborhoods. People can't see just development going up in downtown stadiums, convention centers, huge projects, and then we go to our clinics and we can't even provide preventative care. We go to our neighborhoods and we don't see any development in the neighborhoods. I think we could have expansion of Convention Center, but we have to have people feeling good about Cincinnati so that we can draw conventions here. That's some of the ways that we get conventions to come to Cincinnati is because the local representatives.
But you think it's worth investing what the city's going to have to invest in that convention center to grow it almost 3 times?
I think it's worth looking into. I want to make sure that all the parties involved, that we are able to get the funding that is necessary. I think that some lobbying needs to be done before we make a official step saying that this is what we're going to do. We need to bring all the parties to the table and make sure that the money is on the table to make sure that this happens.
What about light rail? You know, this is one of the issues that Roxanne Qualls has championed, been out in front of, and she's term limited out. I don't hear many candidates talking about light rail, and maybe I'm just not hearing the right things, but where do you stand on light rail?
Well, I think light rail could be a good project, but a couple things that's important. I went to Atlanta to ride on their light rail system and see, one, what the minority participation was, where people with disabilities, was it accessible to them, and were they able to have jobs, what neighborhoods did it stop in, and was it part of the public transportation system? And the answer to those questions was all yes. I would support it.
So you felt good about the Atlanta system?
I felt good about the Atlanta system, and I'd like to see our system do the same. but I believe that it must stop in minority neighborhoods, must have minority participation, and all parties, all governments involved where it's going to stop must put some money on the table to help fund this project.
Chris, just to switch over, one of the issues, you talk a lot about neighborhoods. One of the issues that, again, Roxanne has championed, her voice will disappear, is the whole area of increased home ownership in Cincinnati. Do you think that's an issue that ought to continue, and do you think we're going down the right road, or would you suggest anything different?
I think it's a very vital issue for the city, for the life of our city. We're at 38% for home ownership, and that's incredible when you have a national average that's over 60%. So for me, it
looks different when you look at the metropolitan numbers, by the way. I think those numbers are funny, but go ahead.
Well,
that's an argument between Roxanne and I. Go ahead.
But I think that it's such a vital issue to the life of our city that you need to increase the tax base. You need to bring homeowners in. So we do need programs there. We have City Rama just opening up here. It's a great idea. We need more ideas like that to encourage development.
Let me pick up something that jumped off your sheet that you sent me, and I just want you to explain what this means.
Okay.
It says, I will advocate for meaningful municipal tax reform to create a uniform tax for our region rather than the current multiple taxing confusion. What's that mean when we've got all these government entities? Tell me.
You know, it came up, it's kind of interesting, it came up from my work. I had some people I work with, I work in Tri-County.
Right.
Their spouses work down in the city. And up in Tri-County, we're in Springdale, we pay 1% tax. And down, their wives are paying 2.1%. And they kind of, a lot of complain, a lot of like, why can't we have something that's uniform that can be from city to city, Loveland?
It's called governmental division and fragmentation.
That's true.
What are you going to do about that?
I think that we need to make partnerships and coalitions. It takes one person at a time. It's not going to be just a push through. You need a coalition. You need people to buy into it. It means going out and talking to all those Lovelands and Forest Parks to be able to try and develop a vision for the region, because I think it'll attract more people here. If we had one tax code, that's all the same.
Alicia, on this question of regionalism and cooperation, let's just start in Hamilton County. What could you imagine could be done if you were on council to draw City Hall and the county courthouse, the city and the county, which spend a lot of time throwing things at each other? How could you change that dynamic?
Well, let me say, first of all, that I do support regionalism, but not at the expense of Cincinnati's identity. I think that we could collaborate on certain projects, and we've started to do some of those things. We can do a better job on both ends in making sure that we're able to participate in joint projects. I'd like to see the city and county come together on job training. I think that's very important. We talk about recruiting businesses here. We've got to have the top workforce here, and that's my goal. The other thing I think that we could collaborate on is health. I hosted a joint health conference with the health department, and one of the things they talked about with over 200 people there, how can we jointly come together and address this health problem, growing health problem throughout the county. So I think some of those issues we haven't really jointly come together, and those are issues that affect people.
This is a question I'm just sort of fishing here, but something in the back of my head says that in most places, health departments are run by the counties rather than by the cities. Is that true?
I'm not familiar with all of the counties and how they operate. United States Congresswoman Maxine Waters was in town a couple weeks ago with me, and I talked with her in several issues on how federal and county and state and city could come together. And she had some great ideas, and she was one who suggested that we need to sit down and pool our dollars together so the city clinics and the county can pool our dollars and resources to really help with health care here.
Okay. Chris, a lot of people are out there, and you have a young family, a young child. A lot of candidates are out there talking from the city council point of view about education. Is that an issue for you, and do you think that's a legitimate issue for council candidates, or should they be running for school board?
I think it's a legitimate issue. I think any city has three legs it stands on, one being businesses, the other being neighborhoods, and one being education. I think it's vital to the life of our city. And I think council can't just cast a blind eye towards school.
What can it do, though? And we're less than
it can basically give the money that it's promised to give to use the resources that it has. It can develop mentoring programs. It can give rec centers and libraries to the schools to help them develop good programs.
Alicia, what about you in that area?
I'm a product of the Cincinnati Public Schools, and I've already proposed a partnership with City Hall and our schools by having the civil service exam preparation in our schools, preparing students to come out and fulfill some of these city jobs. Secondly, of course, the financial component that we want to be supportive. And then thirdly, we want to make sure in terms of nursing programs and health-based centers in our schools, and we have the resources through our health department that we can have those in our schools.
You just keep coming back to this health issue, don't you?
It's important.
Have I heard a theme? Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
being with us, and we'll be with you on election night at the board, and we'll see what happens.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, the people who might become mayor. Have a good week.